Our next speaker is Dr. Jorge Flechas, graduated with his medical degree from Loma Linda School of Medicine. He is currently a member of the American College of Nutrition and New York Academy of Sciences, a medical director of High Complex Medical Lab, FFP Lab in Flat Rock, North Carolina. He's a lecturer and has numerous publications. Please give a welcome to Dr. Jorge Flechas.
Thank you. Dr. Abraham just recently died, but a few months ago he knew this conference was going to go on, and so he sent a gift to all of you here, and it's out there on the back. There's a DVD of a 3-hour lecture that he gave on this topic that you can have for free. And then all the articles that we have published on the subject of iodine, probably 90% of them are on this book. And again, it's available out back for all of those that are interested. Yeah, great. Thank you. I am the medical director of FFP Laboratories, and we do iodine testing. And one of the problems that we've been seeing is the high incidence of iodine deficiency in the population. Now, as you will see here, first off, the lack of iodide in thyroid cells causes hyperplasia, that is, many cells inside the thyroid gland. This is why in a low iodine state, the thyroid will go on to develop problems with increased incidence of thyroid cancer cells. In hypothyroidism, there is a high level of TSH, which can cause hypertrophy, enlargement of thyroid cells. So iodine deficiency is felt to be a source of problems with thyroid cancer. Now, as you will see here, you can see that iodine deficiency will manifest as goiter, but notice worldwide, the number one source of mental retardation is iodine deficiency. Now, I want you to look at this. This is a cretin. Dr. Brownstein was referring to these people. Down in the border between Brazil and Bolivia, there's a big, huge iodine deficiency area, and there's thousands of these people in the villages down in that area. They have IQs of about 50 or 60. They look like Neanderthals. And in fact, if you look at the Neanderthal skeletons that have been found throughout the world, they're always up in the mountains. You never find Neanderthal skeletons along the seashores. They're always up in the mountains. And you will probably find many of these type of skeletons along the shorelines of the Great Lakes region from the great iodine deficiency that's in that area from many years ago. The cretin is a person who has no iodine available throughout their, where the mother doesn't have available iodine throughout the pregnancy. The cretin teaches us something. Number one, notice their skeleton. The mesenchymal cells that form the skeleton are affected, the stem cells that make that skeleton are affected, so that even if you take a cretin later on in life and give them iodine, the skeleton remains the same size. These people grow to be about 3 feet tall, so they're known as the little people in Brazil or in Bolivia. Mental retardation. Now, we have been trying to make sure that there's plenty of iodine in the population, but iodine is crucial towards early pregnancy for development of the central nervous system of children. Lack of iodine, you will see this mental retardation that will last the rest of their lives. The mental IQ is set in concrete by age 2. And what David gave you before was how much iodine, what's the minimum amount of iodine that you can take throughout a pregnancy? And we've been giving, that's basically what we're doing here in the United States. The question is, how much can you give and still have good health? We've taken the cues from the Japanese because the Japanese take an average of around 13.8 milligrams of iodine. So we've been giving our patients who become pregnant while taking iodine, because iodine will increase fertility. Number one source of infertility in the United States is iodine deficiency, and throughout the world. And the problem is that what happens to these children, to these fetuses that develop in the presence of a baby, of a mother taking 12.5 milligrams of iodine per day throughout her pregnancy? We're treating her as if she was a Japanese woman. I've got presently in my medical practice about 16 kids who have been, where the mothers took iodine, and every one of them is a genius. We're talking people who have IQs of over 130. And the oldest one right now is 11 years old. She's in the 6th grade, and she's just finished her 2nd college course. She wanted to take something more challenging in the 5th grade, and so last year she took college English and passed with straight A's. That kid took 12.5 milligrams of iodine in the mother throughout that pregnancy. We've got 16 of them right now in the practice, and they're all behaving the same way. The skeleton freezes without iodine, and so the skeleton will only grow to a certain height. The brain freezes, and you end up with mental retardation the rest of life, etc. So kind of an interesting story, but it shows you the potential for iodine. Iodine causes hypertrophy or hyperplasia, and people with goiters have a higher incidence of thyroid cancer, breast cancer, stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, ovarian cancer, and endometrial cancer. These are all tissues that have the ability to concentrate iodine inside the tissue, and this information here was known over 100 years ago. This is nothing new. These numbers, these things here were picked up by the Swiss and picked up by the doctors up in the Great Lakes region, the fact that there is an increased incidence of cancer in patients who have goiter. The NIS system, the essential element iodine is present in every organ and tissue of the human body, not just the thyroid gland. The thyroid has the unique ability to store iodine, but all the other tissues need iodine just as well. Iodine can diffuse into cells via the cell membrane, whereas iodide, the salt of iodine, has to be transported into the cell. This is the sodium iodide system. It's a transport system for transporting iodide into the cells. Several cells beside the thyroid concentrate peripheral iodine against a gradient. So far, the list of these iodide-containing cells beside the thyrocyte are included. They include white blood cells, salivary and lacrimal glands, ciliary body of the eye, the retina, renal cortex, the pancreas, the liver, the gastric cells, small and large intestinal mucosa, nasopharynx, choroid plexus, the skin, adrenal cortex, mammary glands, placenta, uterus, and ovaries. As you can see, The sodium iodide symporter is extremely important. For all of you, probably the most important statement is what happens inside the lacrimal glands. As you can see, the lacrimal glands have the ability to concentrate iodine. What happens if you take a patient and you give them radioactive iodine to get rid of a thyroid cancer or a tumor or something? You give them radioactive iodine. Radioactive iodine can then concentrate inside the lacrimal glands and inside the salivary glands, and patients will complain to you about the fact that my mouth is constantly dry. My tears are going away because my eyes are now dry. It's dry because iodine is used to make tears, iodine is used to make saliva, and if you poison the thyroid, you also poison the ability of these glands to make their tissues. Why would you need iodine in the skin? Iodine is what helps you to sweat. I did a lecture like this in Southern California to 1,000 patients with cancer. And I asked a question, how many of you have lost the ability to sweat? Over 250 people out of the 1,000 said, I can go outside and play and do whatever I want to out in the sun, and I don't sweat. When you lose the ability to start sweating or to sweat, like if you go out here into Charleston and it's a nice warm day and you can't sweat, chances are you're very iodine deficient, and with that comes the increased risk of development of cancer. But I've already seen what that happens. So from the time you lose your ability to sweat to the time you start making cancer cells or start having cancers, it's a matter of years. It could be 2 or 3 years, but usually by the end of 5 years, you've got your problem with the cancer. This also explains why the mammary gland, which has the ability to increase its absorption of iodine, if you can't sweat, you can almost be guaranteed that within a few years, there'll be problems with the breast tissue having cancer. The NIS system and the target cells that were studied, the mechanism used to concentrate peripheral iodide, the salt of iodine, involved an energy-dependent system, transport of 1 atom of iodine sandwiched between 2 atoms of sodium across the cell membrane. This mechanism is called the sodium iodide symporter. The symporters were first discovered back in 1996, and since we now know what the symporter looks like, we have now discovered over 75 symporters in the human body. There are symporters, like when you were going through physiology in dental school, when you were going through physiology, you learned about the calcium channel, the potassium channel. Now with the symporter, you're going to find out that there are over 75 symporters that have strange names, like the multiple vitamin symporter. And these symporters have the ability to concentrate something in a low concentration into a high concentration. So the multivitamin symporter will pick up multiple vitamins and transport them into a cell, and there the concentration of the vitamin will be higher inside the cell than in the bloodstream. A second mechanism for cellular transport has been now be reported in the thyroid, mammary glands, renal cortex, namely a chloride iodine transporter known as a pendrin. The iodine transporter pendrin was speculated to function at the apical side of the membrane. There are now over 75 symporters. Pendrin system is very important because that's the system that absorbs iodine from the intestine. The sodium iodide symporter is non-functional in the human intestine, but the chloride symporter is. And this symporter is how you transport iodine into the body. Now, that's iodide. Iodine will go directly across a membrane, does not need to be transported in. So therefore, what happens is there's only two products that we know of that get absorbed directly through the stomach lining into the body. One is alcohol. Number two is iodine, not iodide. Iodide gets transported in via the chloride symporter. You need to memorize this graph here because this is where the activity is at. Here's the sodium iodide symporter. Iodine gets sandwiched in between two sodium as it goes in. This is an energy-dependent system. To make ATP in the body, what do you need? It's a magnesium-dependent system. So you need to be sure that a person has plenty of magnesium in order to have plenty of ATP, which is used to energize this system to get iodine into the body. You'll notice TSH stimulates the making of the sodium iodide symporter. So when the body senses a lot of iodine in the bloodstream, TSH goes up, and TSH is used by the body to stimulate the body to make more sodium iodide symporters to transport iodine into the cells. Now, iodine will walk across that membrane. Iodide has to be pumped into the cell. Notice inhibitors of the sodium iodide symporter. They are the inflammatory cytokines, but you'll also notice iodide can be used to inhibit the symporter. Estrogen inhibits the symporters. Thyroid hormone inhibits the symporter. If a person is early on, the cell can be, you can give a cell high doses of iodide, and the symporter will shut down temporarily. And then after a few days, the symporter will reopen back up again. So if you're having somebody with an acute hyperthyroid problem, you can shut down the thyroid gland by giving iodide, but knowing that you've only bought yourself some grace time, because within a few days, the iodide will all of a sudden lose its grip upon the thyroid. Estrogen. Look at the problem of hypothyroidism. Let's look at different diseases. Depression. 1.9 women to every 1 man. Rheumatoid arthritis, 4 women to every 1 man. Lupus, 9 women to every 1 man. Hypothyroidism, 15 women to every 1 man. Why is hypothyroidism so much more common in women than it is men? It's right there. Estrogen. Estrogen inhibits the ability of the body to absorb iodine. Flip side of the coin, if you give iodine, you shut down the ability of the body to make much more estrogen. So if there's 16 steps in the making of estrogen in the body from the DNA, 16 different areas that are called for to make one estrogen molecule, iodine and the iodide will shut down at the level of the DNA. It'll shut down 14 of the 16 steps. So you can have, so you need to recognize that you can influence estrogen dominance. Like if you have a woman that's estrogen dominant, too much estrogen, then you can give her iodine and it'll shut down her ability to make estrogen. Let's look at something else. As all of us are aging, especially in our teenage years, the limiting factor for bone growth is estrogen. So the sooner a woman develops estrogen, the faster her skeleton will shut down as far as her having growth. What's interesting is from the day a girl develops menstrual cycles to the day she stops growing height-wise is 2.5 years. So I had a girl in the practice who came in who loves volleyball, but she's only 4'9". So we gave her, and that was at age 13, she was 4'9". We gave her some iodine to shut down estrogen production and allowed her to grow. At age, she didn't start having her first period till she was 16 years old. And today she's 5'10". Okay? So estrogen, you can inhibit estrogen production, especially if you're wanting to try to get a tall girl out of this situation. Thyroid hormone, when you give thyroid hormone, Synthroid, any type of these thyroid hormones, you inhibit the ability of the body to absorb iodine via the sodium iodide symporter. Whenever there's problems with chronic inflammation in the body, you inhibit the ability of the body to absorb iodine. Notice on the other side of this coin is the Pendrin system, the chloride the chloride transporter, and that Pendrin system is how you get iodine into the colloid of the thyroid cell, and this is where thyroid hormone is being made. This Pendrin system is functional and operational on a daily basis in the human breast. However, during pregnancy and such, the sodium iodide symporter becomes the more dominant system for absorption of iodine into the breast tissue, and even when a woman is lactating. How powerful is this system? This system is operational in the thyroid, but it's also operational in the salivary glands of the mouth. As a result, you may have a level of iodine or iodide out here in the serum, in the blood. You may have a level of 1, but because of the sodium iodide symporter, it pumps iodine from a low concentration into a high concentration area, and the level of iodine in here can be anywhere from 28 to 74 times higher than the level of iodine out here in the serum. That's how powerful this sodium iodide symporter is. So if you've got patients who have problems with dry mouth and they're not making enough saliva, it's because there's a good chance that the sodium iodide symporter is malfunctioning. But if this thing is malfunctioning and you can't get iodine into the cell, then you end up with a cell that starts becoming hyperplastic. There will be an increase in cancer. So patients with dry mouth will end up having problems with an increased risk of development of cancer. Remember, if you walk out of here and you don't write this down, I'm dropping a pearl on you. The pearl says, the absence of iodine inside of a cell is a precursor for that cell to go on to develop problems with cancer. Does that make sense? The absence of iodine in a cell is a precursor for the cells to go on to develop cancer. If this system is not working, patients will eventually develop problems with cancer. The peripheral iodide enters the thyroid cells via the symporter at the basal membrane and crosses the thyrocyte as iodide to exit the thyrocyte via the apical membrane, which is the side where you get oxidation and organification. Organification is when you take iodine and it attaches to thyroglobulin and its tyrosine molecules. There are competing substances that are called goitrogens because they sometimes cause goiters by creating a relatively iodide deficiency in the thyroid gland. These substances interfere also with iodine transport and utilized in several organs besides the thyroid gland, and a better term would be iodine transport inhibitors. Iodide utilization inhibitors instead of goitrogens depend on whether the inhibition is at the cellular membrane or at the intracellular sites of iodine oxidation and utilization. Iodide deficiency caused by these inhibitors is sometimes relative because peripheral iodide levels may be adequate, but the target cells are starving for iodide because these transport inhibitors prevent the transfer of peripheral iodine into the cell membrane. Some iodide inhibitors, like fluoride and perchlorate, bind to the halide site of the symporter without being symported or transported into the cell. They cause oxidative damage to the halide binding site. Now, fluoride, the damage that fluoride does is that it inhibits the sodium iodide symporter from functioning. It oxidizes the symporter and keeps you from having absorption of iodine. So if you have somebody who has an iodide problem, we are now capable to assess whether the symporter is functional. This is not theoretical knowledge at this point. We've gotten to the place where we can now assess the function of the symporter to see if it's working like it's supposed to. We can measure the amount of iodine in the bloodstream as compared to the amount of iodine in the saliva. And we now know what these ratios look like, and as a result, we can now give you a proper assessment if a symporter is working. Fluoride and perchlorate are iodide transport inhibitors. Bromide and thiocyanate not only bind to the halide binding site, but are also transported inside the cell, causing further damage by preventing oxidation and organification. Bromide and thiocyanate are both iodide transport and iodide utilization inhibitors. You may ask, where do you get thiocyanate? You know, David spoke about where you get bromide from, but what about thiocyanate? Thiocyanate is found in tobacco products. This helps to explain why people develop cancer with smoking. Is because of the decrease with the use of, with the thiocyanates that are inside tobacco products. These thiocyanates inhibit the ability of the thyroid to, or any cell in the body, to absorb iodine and then be able to concentrate it. A simple test to assess the efficiency of the intracellular transport is greatly needed in order to quantify the degree of defective, damaged inhibition of that system. The saliva radioiodide, serum radioiodide ratio is used in neonates to evaluate TSH and low thyroid hormone in order to confirm a congenital iodide symporter. You will see children who are born where the child is hypothyroid from the get-go. And 1 in about 5,000 children will have a symporter defect. You will see these kids. It's interesting. I saw a child with this, and he had a huge goiter. And I saw the notes from his endocrinologist. The note said, child's been doing fine. He's on thyroid hormone. His TSH level is such and such, and it's within normal range. Child doing great. See him next year. No mention about examining the patient's thyroid. This kid, age 6, had a thyroid the size of an egg sitting on the front of his on the front of his neck. You could see that sucker just pulling back on his head. You could see that thing pop out. Not a word about the fact that he had a goiter, and yet his TSH and everything else was fine. We found out that he had the symporter defect. We treated it, and today at age 10, his thyroid goiter is gone. He's, making his own thyroid hormone, and we've been able to slip him off his thyroid hormone. Why? Because we were able to correct this problem. This is not just a problem that sits out there and it's there. We now have the ability to correct the problem. And that book, the articles that we have in the back, there are many articles in there about how to straighten out this importer, how to fix it. And we are at a point now where this is, we can do that. %10 of babies born are hypothyroid, have an symporter defect. And the mean standard deviation for the saliva serum ratio in 14 subjects was found to be 44, plus or minus 13, with a range of 28 to 74. The mean standard deviation for sodium iodide levels on the same subjects was 0.79. Iodide symporter malfunction may play a role in several clinical conditions. The serum from breast cancer patients blocks the cellular uptake of radioiodide using an in vitro system. The concentration of iodine in breast tissue from breast cancer is 4 times lower than normal breast tissue. And again, a defective sodium iodide symporter is a precursor for development of breast cancer. And I can't stress this enough to you guys. Iodine is crucial towards maintaining proper health, especially in the breast tissue. A significant difference in the spot urine iodide levels was observed in women attending a university breast cancer center between smokers and non-smokers. Because of the increased serum thiocyanate levels in smokers, a decreased efficiency of the symporter system would be expected. This can now be confirmed with the saliva serum iodide ratio. And what we did in this study, this was done by Dr. Eskin up at in Philadelphia, is that what they found was that if you do a urine iodide level, a spot test, first morning urine, you will find out that in the spot test, that if the level of iodine in the spot test is less than 100 microgram per liter, there is an increased risk of that woman going on to develop breast cancer. This is a simple test. All you do is gather the first morning urine. But he showed out of 50 samples, he's gone up to 150, 300 samples now. It's held consistent that the amount of iodine in the cells of women with breast cancer goes down for the first morning urine as compared to a very elevated iodine in the serum in patients who are normal. So this, and then they further confirmed that the sodium, that there's something about cancer that makes the sodium iodide symporter malfunction. The serum of 15 patients with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and 84% of patients with Graves' disease have antibodies against the sodium iodide symporter. We've actually looked at this, it's called using the fluorescence excitation analysis, where they looked at patients, that is, how much iodine is in the thyroid. And look at this. Palmer et al. Reported a mean standard deviation of 10.3 milligrams in normal men, 8.2 milligrams in normal women, and 4.4 in cases of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So again, it basically shows us that what that slide showed us early on. Hashimoto's is a problem of inflammation of the thyroid gland. And they have found that when you have chronic inflammation, it inhibits the sodium iodide symporter, and the amount of iodine in the cells of patients with Hashimoto's much, much less. Another doctor, Okerlund, Likewise, published values of 9.9 in 26 women, 9.2 in 41 cases, and in cases of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, the iodine inside the thyroid was found to be 4.8. Let me just give you something that's really interesting for all of you. 3 years ago, in the Journal of Infectious Disease, they published a chronic infection in the thyroid. 80% of all these patients with this infection had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. The normal people had the infection only about 12.5%. What's the infection? Parvovirus B19. This is a pearl. Parvovirus, like if you came down with mononucleosis, mono will live with you the rest of your life, and it lives where? And the taste buds at the back of your tongue. You came down with chickenpox. Where does chickenpox live inside your body? It's going to be your friend for the rest of your life. In the spinal cord. Parvovirus B19 is being spread around as if it were a cold. But once it gets inside your body, guess where it loves to reside and stay inside the nucleus of that cell? The thyroid. Parvovirus B19 has now been shown to be present in 80% of patients with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, only 12.5% in normal people. So it basically tells us that there is a viral particle that has now been identified in Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and that is causing problems with chronic inflammation inside the cell, which inhibits then the ability of the cell to absorb iodine. This is very interesting. You should get, this article. It's called the Sodium Iodide Symporter, Characterization, Regulation, and Medical Significance. This is a very important article because it helps us to understand more. If you do a Google search on the word Symporter, you're going to find out about the other 75 Symporters that are found inside the body. Chiotropic effect of iodine. A chiotropic agent is a substance which disrupts the structure of and denatures macromolecules such as proteins and nucleic acids. Chiotropic solutes increase the entropy of the system by interfering with the intramolecular interactions mediated by non-covalent forces, such as hydrogen bonds, van der Waals forces, and hydrophobic effects. What did I just say? A chiotropic agent, iodine, has the ability to disrupt the structure and denatures macromolecules, etc. Let me give you a perfect illustration. 100 years ago, we discovered that, first off, we now know that patients with asthma, emphysema, this type of problem, develop these mucus plugs inside their lungs, and they're constantly they're trying to get rid of these thick mucus plugs in their lungs. And we learned that if you give iodine disrupts these proteins, and it turns these thick mucus plugs into liquefied proteins. And as a result, then the patients can cough these things up, and it only takes one, and this stuff comes up. Iodine is what they call mucolytic. It has the ability to lyse these thick mucus plugs and to turn them into more liquidy so that they can come out. And the way that iodine does it is called the chiotropic effect. Iodine, as Dr. Brownstein showed, has one electron on the outside, whereas your products that you use to get rid of mercury, lead, etc., These products contain 2 electrons on the outside. They're divalent. Iodine is monovalent. And as a result, iodine has the ability to go in there, and it can penetrate deep into a cell, all the way down to the mitochondria. And iodine has the ability, because of its monovalent activity, has the ability to attach to mercury, lead, etc., and many other heavy metals. And iodine has the ability to attach to these metals. It liquefies those proteins and sucks the heavy metals out of the cell, which then get into the bloodstream. 98% of all the iodine in the body is cleared through the kidney, and as a result, you will see the mercury and lead coming out through the kidney within less than 24 hours. That's how fast this stuff works. So we were able to demonstrate that in some of the early studies that we did on iodine, and you will see those reports in the papers that we presented outside. Macromolecule structure and function is dependent upon the net effects of these forces. Protein folding, therefore it follows that an increase in chiotropic solutes and the biological systems will denature macromolecules, reduce enzymatic activity, and induce stress on a cell. A cell will have to synthesize stress protein protectants. Tertiary protein folding it's dependent upon the hydrophobic forces from amino acids throughout the sequence of the protein. Now, what have I just discussed with you? Iodine. Let's look at the thyroid molecule, thyroid T4. Thyroid T4 is iodine attached to a thyroglobulin molecule, and that thyroglobulin molecule is folded up. When you put lots of iodine into the fluids surrounding the thyroglobulin molecule, the iodine will help the protein to denature itself, open up, and to release the iodine that's necessary inside the cell. If there's not enough iodine in the fluid surrounding the thyroglobulin molecule, the thyroid T4 molecule will stay like this, and it won't do anything. So you got plenty of thyroid T4, but there's no activity going out, and hence we call it subclinical hypothyroidism. It's not, that may be the problem, but the problem may be the fact that there's not enough iodine in the fluids surrounding the molecule, so that if there's no iodine, then the molecule stays like this. When you provide iodine, the molecule opens up, releases its thyroid hormone, bingo. Which explains why we see patients who take iodine for the iodine challenge test, and we give them 50 milligrams of iodine, and the patients will come back and say, my goodness, that's the best I have felt in years. Or people who have severe constipation take iodine, and within a matter of hours start having bowel movements. It wasn't the fact that the iodine did it, it's the fact that iodine opened up the thyroglobulin molecule and allowed thyroid to do its work, and hence all of a sudden everything starts working like it's supposed to. It's called the chiotropic effect of iodine. And iodine has, when we did the original studies on iodine, we noticed that chelating agents are bivalent. Iodine is monovalent. Iodine has been known for over 100 years to help get rid of lead, cadmium, arsenic, aluminum, and mercury. In your handout that you'll be picking up outside, that's on page 129 of your handout. This does not happen weeks afterward. This happens within 24 hours of taking in the iodine. You can see it in a 24-hour urine collection before and after exposure to iodine, you'll see these heavy metals start coming out of the body through the urine. It takes about, at 50 milligrams a day, it will take about a year for these heavy metals to totally clear out of the body. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen over a time period of almost a year. That is how iodine works in a chiotropic effect, in the sense that it is monovalent. It is not a chelator, but it does have the ability to get rid of lead, cadmium, so on. Now, the CD that's out there will give you an illustration of that. Dr. Abraham put some lead in a sulfur molecule in some water, and you can see the water is very cloudy. And then he adds iodine to there, and all of a sudden the water becomes clear. And that's because of the chiotropic effect of iodine on lead, and this is how you can get rid of lead in the body by giving iodine. It's very dramatic when you see it, but be sure you get that DVD. It's probably one of the most interesting things you'll see. Iodine poor versus iodine rich tissue. The main difference between the unaffected and unfolded or dissociated thyroglobulin species was in the amount of thyroxine or the lower levels of deionization, DIT. The results suggest that non-covalent, especially hydrophobic rather than covalent interactions, are involved in the stabilization and configuration of the thyroglobulin molecule. Again, what they did was that they took thyroglobulin, they looked at the thyroglobulin levels, and they looked at the factors that unfolded the molecule. And this is the article that gives us the clues that iodine is not just for thyroid hormone. Iodine is crucial towards many, many different proteins inside the body, especially the mucus glands of the thyroid. And, the mucus glands of the lungs, where iodine works as a mucolytic agent. Now, folks, people are going to sit there and say, this is called the schizophrenia of medicine. People will say that if you give more than 100 or 200 micrograms of iodine, that somebody's going to get into trouble, which is why the RDA has been set at about 150, right in there. And what ends up happening is that we've recommended to patients that they take 12.5 milligrams of iodine per adult, which is what's going on in Japan, versus those of us who are behind the 8 ball. I'm a vegetarian. So I got caught into this as an 8 ball issue 12 years ago. And I developed hypothyroidism and constipation and all of that. Started taking iodine, all of that disappeared. And now the thing is that I'm 62 years old. And what's happened is that I started taking iodine when I was about 50 years old. And what has ended up happening is we just did a CT scan of my abdomen, and my aorta is 0 atherosclerosis. We did an ultrasound of my carotids, 0 atherosclerosis. Iodine, definitely, what David was talking about, that happened to the rabbits, where they gave cholesterol to the rabbits. I eat an egg or two a week. But the thing is, I have 0 atherosclerosis in my body. I'm telling you, this is very, very powerful. It inhibits atherosclerosis. It inhibits the ability of fat to accumulate in the blood vessels. But this is part of the issue of iodine is that it has this ability to change things in the body and make them more water soluble. Chiotropic agents can be used to increase the water solubility of a variety of organic compounds which are sparingly soluble in water. The effects of iodine is not due to the iodinization of the proteins, but due to the effect of iodide on the structure of water. Dr. Abraham has confirmed that iodine at daily doses of 12.5 to 50 milligram increases urinary lead and urinary mercury as early as 24 hours post-iodine intake. And this article is one of those that's available for you outside. Any questions? Yes?
Is iodine safe for people with G6PD deficiency?
G6PD? Yes?
Safe for them?
Yes. Yes. In fact, if you want to increase G6PD activity, what do? You can take DHEA. DHEA deficiency will give you a G6PD deficiency-like syndrome. And when you have that pathway open, the body will make more 5-carbon sugars. The 5-carbon sugars are essential for the making of DNA for cells. So you need to have you have to decrease the ability of the body to make 5-carbon sugars. And patients who take large amounts of DHEA, and I'm saying somewhere between 25 to 50 milligram a day, the incidence of cancer is way low because of the decreased ability of the body to make 5-carbon sugars because of what DHEA does to the G6PD system. Any other questions?
Me? Just if you
We're in trouble back there. Yes? Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I'm not going anywhere.
We could take a few more questions and then
2 or 3 more questions. How's that?
we'll have you come up.
Janet with the mic.
So if a patient is experiencing dry mouth, is it generally a good idea for them to try taking some iodine?
Yes, ma'am. In males, the males, because they don't have estrogen or very little estrogen, they can take about 12.5 milligram a day. That's about 2 drops of a 5% solution of Lugol's. Again, David did iterate the fact that Lugol's can discolor the teeth, and that can be a problem. So in females, because of the increased estrogen in their body and the fact that they have breasts, which are much bigger than ours, you have the iodine, you need a higher dosage of iodine. And in women with infertility, you can increase the iodine to 50 milligrams a day, and that will work. Again, you need iodine for normal body functions, especially the ovaries. In fact, if you have a patient who has problems with hyperthyroidism, you look for a hot thyroid gland, but when you do your radioactive studies on that, you also slip the camera over their ovaries, because the number 2 tissue for making thyroid hormone is the human ovary. Guess what the number 3 tissue is for making thyroid hormone?
breast.
The bone marrow. White blood cells have the ability to make thyroid hormone. So now you know of 3 tissues that have the ability to make thyroid: the thyroid gland, the ovaries, and the white blood cells of the bone marrow. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yes.
You answered it, I think, in that the recommended dose for everyone would be 12.5 milligrams, and for
That's exactly what's going on in Japan right now.
and pregnant women higher. Would you recommend any testing prior to starting taking it to assess, an initial level before taking it?
Yes, and why would I do that? Because, in the United States, we have these regulatory boards, and what happens is that if you should happen to give iodine to somebody who's got a hot thyroid nodule, and they become hyperthyroid, it's going to be your neck on the line. So you would like to be able to document that this person is iodine deficient, and that's why you put them on iodine. But if they get into a hot thyroid nodule and they become hyperthyroid and they spend $80,000 in a hospital visit, guess who's going to end up paying for that hospital visit because you didn't bother to check their iodine levels? Does that make sense? And I guarantee you there are many endocrinologists out there who think that giving iodine is the source of hyperthyroidism and problems like that. And that's further, that's far away from the truth. Yes?
Had a patient that came in, her history turned up Hashimoto's, of which she had been told not to take iodine.
Right.
But within about 30 minutes of leaving the office, called back, her 12-year-old daughter had been diagnosed, just gotten the test back with Hashimoto's also. Is that a dietary issue? In other words, iodine issue, congenital
Okay.
transport?
Here is the source of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. The source is a inflammatory gene at the DNA level. It's called nuclear factor kappa beta. When nuclear factor kappa beta gets activated, either by an infection or things like gluten or a fungus infection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, when nuclear factor kappa beta gets activated, it alters over 400 genes on the DNA. And when nuclear factor kappa beta gets activated, you get into problems with increased atherosclerosis, increased cancer, increased arthritis, and the fourth thing is increased thyroiditis, an increase in Hashimoto's thyroiditis and Graves' disease. This is due to activation of nuclear factor kappa beta. And in fact, if any of you will bother to look at the article published in the Journal of Infectious Diseases, 2010, parvovirus B19 and Hashimoto's, you will see that the authors looked at nuclear factor kappa beta activation, and you will see that the activity went up. And again, they know, as well as the rest of us now know, that activation of nuclear factor kappa beta is the source of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. How do you turn it off? There are natural substances in nature that have the ability to turn it off. One is resveratrol, 300 milligram a day. 2, turmeric, 1,000 milligram per day. 3 is a product called boswellia, another name for frankincense. Boswellia, about 250 milligram a day. And when you take all 3 of those, you will see that TPO antibodies start dropping precipitously. The highest TPO antibody I've seen is 42,000 TPO antibody. And with taking this combination of these 3 natural substances, the latest check on this gentleman, his TPO antibody was down to 250 from 42,000 just 3 years ago. Turmeric, 1,000 milligram a day. Boswellia, 250. And resveratrol, 300 milligram. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flechas.